Olivier, we're here at your annual Congress in Istanbul with hundreds of delegates from European airports. Would you actually start by telling us what's business like at the moment? I mean, is it still a good thing to be in the airport business?
Well, it's always a good time to be in the airport business. That is the principle of it. But having said that, more seriously, I think clearly in Europe we are being impacted by the sovereign debt crisis that has transformed itself into an economic crisis and now a job crisis. That means that you have a lot of negative traffic determinants that are affecting our business. Business confidence and consumer confidence is quite low, so that means that we're seeing traffic going down, especially in the EU part of Europe. Passenger traffic in the EU part of Europe entered into recession last October, and it has not really improved since that. The first months of 2013 were very difficult, and we don't see any significant improvements for the rest of the year. We might get some improvements early next year. We're being told that macroeconomic conditions will improve, but only very gradually and very slowly from the end of the year. So I would say this is the macroeconomic conditions are the main negative traffic determinants. But in addition to that, you have quite record levels of oil prices, and this is weighing onto the airlines and the capacity to put on the market. We continue to have horrendous aviation taxes in some major European countries, including the UK, Germany, and France. And Austria, and of course this is not helping traffic as well. And we are seeing still unrest, political instability in some of key external markets around the Mediterranean, North Africa, Near East. These markets are very important for many European airports. In particular, many regional airports depend on leisure traffic to those markets. So overall the traffic situation is not very good.
It's a pretty gloomy picture. In your State of the Industry presentation here, you highlighted the two-speed momentum that exists in growth rates in traffic between the EU and the non-EU states. Do you actually think there are any green shoots of recovery discernible for the Western European market?
I think what I've been told, because we don't have yet the consolidated results for May, but what I've been told is that the months of May and the beginning of June have looked a little bit better. But we need to consider that we're entering to the heat of the summer season, so traditionally this is a period when people fly. And what has happened, we think people have cut back on flying, on leisure flying in the off-peak months, but they've tended to stick to their plans, hopefully, for the summer months. So hopefully the summer should be at, we shouldn't get too much damage during the summer. The concern will come back again next winter. And there again, we're very dependent on how macroeconomic conditions evolve.
But the forecast from today, the long-term projection, is that the growth we've enjoyed over the past 4 decades will effectively be halved by 2035. I mean, where do you actually now see the biggest opportunities for growth?
Well, in Europe, the biggest opportunities for growth are in Eastern Europe, where the propensity of citizens to fly is still very low, and where there's still a catch-up to be done in terms of economic growth for these countries compared to Western Europe. Huge opportunities in Turkey, obviously. This is a country where it's a very young population, a country where standards of living are rising fast. This is a country that is projecting itself on the global scene, so all this is combining to push demand very strongly for aviation. I mean, Istanbul Airport grew by more than 20% over the first months of the year. This is amazing. Russia is a very interesting market, a bit similar to Turkey in terms of being an emerging economy where the aspiration of people to fly is there. And interestingly, we have some pockets, some other pockets of growth at the moment, like Norway. But we know Norway, with oil, it's a very rich country that is immune to the situation we're seeing elsewhere in Western Europe. But having said that, overall, I think we're going to still have growth in the future. You're right, it's going to be much slower growth, but it's still going to be growth in all European countries. We haven't yet reached the maturity of our market. Our market is slowly reaching maturity, so we're still going to have growth. We're going to have significant growth coming from low-cost carriers, from airlines like Turkish Airlines, which are being very aggressive in expanding their network across Europe and between Europe and the rest of the world. And we are going to see significant growth on traffic flows between Europe and non-European countries, so intercontinental traffic. Intra-European traffic for sure will reach maturity, but traffic between Europe and the other continents, especially the new economic powerhouses of Asia, Latin America, and Africa, which is the next big thing, that is going to explode. We see a potential in the next 20 years of more than 330 million new passengers just on intercontinental flows. So what you will see is that the balance in the structure of the European aviation market will change, with more prominence to intercontinental traffic and intra-European traffic becoming more mature, more stable, and growing much less.
So the pendulum is effectively swinging, but there is clearly a downward impact on airports based on what you've been saying, only because it's going to influence their investment in infrastructure, and I suspect there's going to be an even greater, and that's potentially damaging because they might overcompensate by not investing where they need to.
Well, that's the situation we face today, indeed. I think what's happening today is that because of the fact that today in certain markets there's no growth, or rather there's even recession in terms of traffic. Adding to that, we have problems in accessing to private finance. I mean, capital costs have gone up the roof. Close to 30% increase in 2 years. That is adding more than 2 billion euro to our cost base. You have also very little political support at the moment in Europe for airport expansion, and a general lack of confidence. So of course, airports managers, with the pressure of their shareholders, including public shareholders, are being very careful in terms of their capital expenditure. And maybe considering the long-term challenge of still future demand, they may be a bit extra careful, maybe too much careful.
They might perhaps also depend even more on their non-aeronautical revenues to help support any investment they want to make.
Yes,
they can afford to make.
That's going to be the key. We know the money is not going to come from the airlines. We know we're entering an era of slower growth, which is really impacting the fundamentals of what has been the business model for airports over the last 40 years. Because we are a very capital-intensive business. We have very high fixed costs. To sustain that, we've been used to rely on the systematic assurance of dynamic growth. Now the clock is turning. There's a shift. In the future, that growth will be much slower. So our ability to finance the development of our infrastructure is being challenged. That means we need to transform our business model and think differently about how we make money and the pace of which we will develop our infrastructure.
Just moving on, in your speech you mentioned the commoditization of airports. Can you just really tell us a bit more?
The commoditization of our industry is something that is affecting many other industries these days. The airlines have been used to it for many years, and it is now impacting airports. It's the combination of slower growth prospects and increasing competition between airports. These days, passengers and airlines are really footloose in terms of their choice of airports. I mean, airlines have changed their business model. They are very flexible now in allocating their crews and aircraft around airports. They are doing airport shopping. Passengers themselves are putting destinations into competition with each other. That means, where will I go next weekend? Well, I can go to Riga, I can go to Venice, or I can go to Valencia. That brings a lot of competition into the airport sector. So that means that a lot of pressure on revenues with no assurance of growth. Growth will no longer be a given for every airport. And this is commoditization at play.